Joe Rogan isn't pulling any punches. I think Sunny Hostin's latest attack on The View against Coleman Hughes has lifted the veil of courtesy that Joe Rogan had for so long, and that's exactly what makes the clip you're about to watch so satisfying, as Joe has a good laugh with Coleman Hughes, remembering the disastrous segment we just saw 2 weeks ago. There's details now emerging around that segment that I need to tell you, but watch this before we dive in.
Yeah, I saw you on The View.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's been overwhelming my past couple days.
Yeah, is that annoying?
No.
No?
No. I mean, it's just, when I was on there, I really had no idea how it was going to land with the audience. So I just went in there, did my thing. I had no idea what to expect. I didn't know who Sunny Hostin was. I actually still really don't know. So I wasn't expecting necessarily for her to kind of try to ambush me in that way and attack my character in that way.
It is the show that people love to hate.
Yes, that's true. That's true.
They get so much hate watching and hate watching viral clips of them saying ridiculous things. I mean, it is a rabies infested hen house.
I never thought I'd hear that from Joe about The View, but aside from the words themselves, isn't there a kernel of truth to that statement? When Barbara Walters first set the show sailing back in 1997, she probably didn't think it was going to remain largely unchanged in its political culture over the most transformative 3 decades in history. And a few months before she died, sources told the People magazine that after the Whoopi Goldberg controversy, that this was not what Barbara Walters had wanted for the show. Maybe what we saw Sunny Hostin do with a guest like Coleman Hughes exemplifies why. Now when you cram that into a time constraint of a few minutes they give to most guests, and the constant interruptions from the panel, it's clear that Coleman was brought in more to just be berated than understood. And I think the clash between Joe Rogan and The View, even though not new, is based on just how different the two platforms are. The View's old, outdated, beholden to the mainstream and boxed up inside the same predictable politics, while Rogan is the biggest name in the alternative media space with a guest list that's truly intellectually diverse in a way that puts The View to shame, and most of all, he actually has conversations with them in long form to truly understand opposing views. None of that is present in a show like The View, and it shows every time there's a guest that doesn't fit like a puzzle piece in the political picture of this panel.
The fans, the real fans of The View that are like, oh, these ladies are on point. Most of those people can't leave the house. Like, they're probably immobile.
Right. Because their mom's taking their kids to school, and that's,
It's a very strange show, but it's fun to watch. It's just fun to watch them.
It's good entertainment.
Yeah.
Undoubtedly.
Well, they're just, it's interesting because I think Sunny is very intelligent, but she's ideologically captured.
Right.
That's sort of, I think the other ones, there's a couple of the other ones, don't have to name any names, who are just very dull-minded. But I think Sunny's not one of them. I think she's smart but captured.
Sure, I think she came into it with an agenda.
Of course. They do everything with an agenda.
Yeah.
He's not taking names here, but Joe has already said who in the past. Just a few months ago in the conversation with Christopher Rufo, Joe said Whoopi Goldberg was, quote, certainly not the brightest person, which is just a nice way of saying very dull-minded, as he does here. Joe Rogan and The View actually have a history of friction that goes back at least 4 to 5 years at this point, at least after the start of the pandemic with Joe Rogan and the supposed ivermectin controversy back then. They traded blows against each other on air, shooting back and criticizing to throw the ball in the other's court. But in this particular case, perhaps Joe Rogan's idea that Sunny Hostin is considerably smarter than the rest of the panel leaves him struggling to describe what happened with Coleman Hughes. If not intelligence, her constant misreading and misrepresentations of Coleman as a conservative or charlatan at least point to the fact that she doesn't do her homework on her guests and lacks the social cues to understand that she's going too far on a pointless matter. And the result? We've seen that in the last week, with people coming back to the channel to demonstrate how it's an outdated echo chamber more than a platform for genuine discussion on vital topics. Maybe Sunny Hostin didn't prove herself to be less than intelligent, but she did give an air of intellectual dishonesty, an unwillingness to engage, and a need to attack Coleman's character rather than his argument. Even if you go back and watch that brief segment, it's easy to forget that Sunny really didn't respond to Coleman Hughes' contention that class is a better way to look at poverty than race. It all kind of steamrolled after she attacked his professional standing and credentials while the rest of the panel became uneasy, wanting to go to a commercial break.
I think the problem with that show is that show has this very specific ideological bubble in which they operate in, and they always bring on a token conservative woman and they yell over her and silence her. And, they did that with Meghan McCain, and they did that with what is that other blonde woman from Survivor? Do you remember her, Jamie? She was always yelling. I mean, it's a bizarre show.
So we had 8 minutes to deal with this topic on one of the biggest platforms in the country, and especially an audience that isn't my typical audience. If anything, the Views audience is really who needs to hear my message the most. And Sonny decided to take up a few minutes of that precious 8 minutes and attack me as someone who's been co-opted by the right and someone who's a charlatan.
Joe is thinking of Elizabeth Hasselbeck there, who was herself a nice fit with the Views panel with the homogeneity of political acumen and opinion. But perhaps what makes Joe Rogan so open in criticizing and making fun of the show is the degree of malice it showed in the conversation with Coleman Hughes. Coleman is a young, soft-spoken independent journalist and content creator who doesn't even have a long history of work or controversies for Sonny to accuse him of being co-opted. And yet when even someone like him isn't safe from the smears and accusations at the show, it reveals just how far gone the panel is from having any kind of real political dialogue with a readiness to change their mind over time.
Did she use the term charlatan?
She did, and it's funny because I actually didn't notice it in real time. I kind of went in one ear and out the other. But
how did she say it? Do you remember what
she said? Something like, a lot of people in the black community, implicitly herself included, think that you've been co-opted by the right and that you're a charlatan.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And I explained to her, I've only voted twice, both for Democrats, Hillary and Biden, very open to voting for Republicans. So I'm a political independent, and I'm only young enough to have voted twice. I'm an analyst at CNN, and I write for the Free Press, which is Barry Weiss's.
Yeah.
And I'm independent in all of those endeavors.
I think for Joe Rogan as well, the View crossed from the category of being ignorant to actually being malicious after he saw that interaction with Coleman, and that's what lets his words flow more freely, not as chained by the cover of courtesy as before. Either way, The View has reportedly shot itself in the foot with interactions like this. That 8-minute segment is over, but the reverberating impact of them being made fun of is going to come back at them sooner or later. Right now, the show's shed most other audiences apart from a smaller devoted core of people that are still keeping it running. That means we'll probably see attempts by them to try and make a comeback and stay relevant even after 3 decades of being on air, but time is proving that it's going to be difficult, if not impossible, to hobble along like this for long. Every bad interaction like the one with Coleman Hughes and every bashing session like the one Joe Rogan gave will be one more push before it finally falls. Before that happens, I think we'll keep seeing bits like this, cementing memories for the future to remember why the show faded into history.